Welcome back, guys, to week 5 of the Skybound Dragons expansion Meta Snapshot. Now, guys, I'm saying it's week 5, but in many ways, it's kind of like week 1 because we just had the balance patch, right? We always get this. It's a 2-month window between each release, and the month in between that's when we get the balance patch, right? So we've just had the Forest balance patch, slight buffs to some of the key Forest archetypes and cards. And so, yeah, it's looking like we could have some good changes in the meta. Now, I made a few changes this week, and let me know in the comments what you think to this. I kind of noticed, looking back at the previous meta snapshots, that it was kind of becoming a little bit like a collection of all of the possible archetypes and then me putting them into a tier list. And I was kind of thinking about that, and I was like, you know, as the game gets bigger and bigger, we're going to get more and more archetypes. I'm going to end up with like hundreds of decks. And it's not really a meta snapshot when you do that. It's more like, I say, a tier list of all the possible archetypes. So I've had a bit of a rethink about how I do this, and I'm actually going to focus on what I really define as the meta snapshot. And that is a snapshot of the kind of decks you are most likely to come across right now on ladder or in tournaments, and then rank those by the tiers. So what that means is that the tiers 1 to 4, there are tier 4 decks that can hit like beyond in Grandmaster, right? If they're on this list, they're a good deck. It doesn't mean a tier 4 deck is bad. But what that means is I can kind of separate them out a little bit more, and I can really kind of drill into, like, is this deck better than this deck? Whereas I feel like before I was putting a lot of the actual meta decks in tiers 1 and 2, and then just a kind of zoo of old archetypes that hardly anybody plays anymore. I hope that makes sense. Let's dive on into this week's Meta Snapshot so you can see what I'm talking about, and then let me know in the comments what you think to this change, and let's go from there. Massive shout out to everybody who has subscribed to the channel. I really appreciate it. I'm pushing for 5k subs. I want to do a big celebration stream when we get there as well, so I really appreciate all the support. That said, let's dive into this week's Meta Snapshot. Okay, so as I said, I have got 4 tiers, and I think if you don't see the archetype in this snapshot this week, that probably means that for me it's in tier 5. And tier 5 just means that it's a bit of a meme, or it's not really a deck that's played often in the meta. It doesn't mean you can't come up with something like, you know, you could cook something up that's really, really good and does well and can take out the tier 1 deck. But it probably is in that tier 5. I don't call it a dumpster, but the kind of meme tier. So I'm going to focus on the top 4. And tier 4 for me, I'm putting Evo Tempo Forest, Ramp Dragon, Super Evo Dragon, Ward Haven, and Spellboost in tier 4. Now, again, you might be surprised looking at some of these if you've been following this meta snapshot, because previously these types of decks would have been higher. But I've explained myself already at the beginning, right? That I'm really drilling down now to the key meta decks and then trying to differentiate between those in the tiers. So these are all good decks, guys. Evo Tempo Forest may well go up because it is very, very early on in the meta, and we don't know how well the changes have impacted them. I am going to show you a deck that's already got to Beyond Grandmaster in the, 3 days since the changes have happened for Evo Tempo Forest. I'm going to show you that deck. So it could definitely be higher, but I think for now, I'm pretty happy with calling it tier 4. I think Super Evo Dragon is a fun deck. It can be good. But I think the other Evo decks, the other Evo archetypes in the game right now, kind of just pip it, really. They're just a little bit better. I think Ward Hybrid Haven's really interesting. I've got a tournament-winning deck to show you, and it's in an interesting spot because we know that Ward is traditionally pretty good against Forest, although with Rose Queen, I don't know if that will be the case. We might start seeing people teching in things like Temple as well. Again, I think can be very, very powerful, but I've got it in 4. And Spellboost, we know, as always, you know, it's been a tier 1 deck for most of the game. It's a very, very powerful deck. The power ceiling is still there, but I do think in this meta, it's a bit easier to bully Spellboost, either to aggro it down or to kind of get in before its combo goes off. And even if they do play really well, they can all obviously just brick when they do get the combo too. So still a really good deck, but I think it's somewhere towards the top of tier 4 for me. So let's look at the deck. So this is Toby's Evo Forest deck that he just hit Beyond with literally about an hour ago from me making this. So that's pretty impressive, right? 3 days into the new ladder. already hit beyond, and yeah, the deck's very good. You've got the Good Fairy of the Pond, which is quite an important card, guys, so don't cut it. One of the reasons why it's really important is when you play UL and Society, you want to be able to play something on the same turn to get the benefit of the free evolution that turn. So having a 1-drop like a Good Fairy of the Pond, or a 1-drop that comes off of the Fairy Fencer, something like that, is actually really good. So also obviously gives you early tempo if you draw it on turn 1 as well. Now we know that OER has received a pretty significant buff, so that we're able to now trade better with the rush ability, but also to be able to recycle those Evos. And I'm really pleased to see that Toby is including Catalina. Y'all probably saw my Cat Evo video guide. If you've not seen that one, it's only like a week old, so go and check that out on the channel. And I put Catalina in this deck because I think it goes really well with it. And it's great to see that Toby's adopted that, and he's managed to make that work for himself, hitting that beyond rank. Other than that, it's a deck that just puts a lot of pressure on, really good at kind of evolving very frequently. And that's why we've got the full set of Sand Dolphins. I think this might be the only Evo type that warrants the full set of Sand Dolphin, because beyond the Congregant of the Unwinding, is it Unwinding? I'm not even sure. It's there isn't really any other wink on, any other sort of big wink on. So yeah. So this is the deck, guys, and yeah, I think this is a very fun deck. One of the more fun decks to play right now in the meta. Next up, we got Ramp Dragon. Now, the Ramp Dragon deck is in a kind of interesting spot because I've got it in tier 4, right? And I've got it in tier 4 because it's mainly due to things like consistency, and it has some pretty good matchups. But I just still think that, you know, when you don't get the ramp off, that it just is significantly weaker. One of the variants that actually hit rank 1 just before the balance patch, which is probably my favorite version, to be honest, is this deck, but you drop the Neptune and the Azurift, I can't even say that, and stick in a second Genesis Dragon and a third Wilness. And what you've got now is just absolute consistency, right? With, I think everything's a 3-drop at that point, except for the 2 Season Mermans. And it's just a very proactive game plan. So you're kind of giving up on the kind of control elements and survival elements of Neptune and Azurift, and you're just purely going to win the game. And let's say the guy got to rank 1. So very similar to this, just a couple of card changes. Depends which way you want to go. If you want a bit more control and heal, go with this. If you want to kind of finish a more linear game plan, go with what I just said. Next up, we got this Super Dragon list. So here we go. You can see got things like Meg, obviously much better than I'd originally rated, and Wise Dragon getting cheaper every single time that we super evolve. So yeah, it's really fun. It's great to see cards like Izmir getting a run. Olivia's actually really good in here because Olivia obviously means you get 2 Super Evos for the price of 1, which is absolutely wonderful, especially for cards like Wise Dragon. And yeah, just grind your opponent out. But as I say, I just don't think it's quite as good as some of the other Evo archetypes in the meta right now. This is Wardhaven. Now, this version I'm showing you here actually won the recent Career Open, I think it was last weekend. And it's really good. I just started running this towards the end of the patch, and I was climbing really healthily with it at a very positive win rate. A couple of things to note: they actually put the Holy Shield Maiden in there. It's really interesting. It's a card. It's a card I've always loved in Haven. The barrier, very important when you're playing Aether boards down. Having a Holy Shield Maiden actually makes a massive difference to how effective that wall is, because now this thing has Aura and Barrier, and that is just an absolute nightmare to get through. Like things like Puppet might get through it a bit easier, right, with the ability to have Bane, very cheap. But outside of that, it's a real nightmare. So I really like that tech. He also runs a single copy of Sarah. I've seen people sort of move away from that since it first came out, but yeah, it's really pretty good. You know, it's another thing you can chuck down for 6 and just have this massive wall. Also, Sincero can't actually clear it, If you have played the Wilbert down first, and then you play Sarah, then you actually, the Sincero can actually clear a Sarah. So that's quite an interesting, just an interesting detail to know about that matchup. So yeah, nice, interesting Ward Haven build to share with you there. Next up, we got Spellboost Rune. Not too much to say here, same as last week. And let's look at tier 3. So in tier 3, I'm actually putting the Rose Queen OTK deck here for now. I actually think this deck is pretty powerful, if I'm honest. I think the final version of this is obviously yet to be settled. There's several ways of going about it, which I think is what makes it really interesting. And is going to make this archetype pretty solid now, because it means that you can adapt. You can adapt the other cards that you're playing to the meta, but still have the Rose Queen OTK to finish. So I actually think this is going to become a pretty embedded archetype now for Forest. And I also think Rose Queen herself as a card is going to fit into several other play styles, not just a pure kind of control OTK build. So it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. Again, it may well end up being tier 2. I don't know if I think it's going to be tier 1, but it may end up being tier 2. I'm going to stick it here in tier 3 for now. I think it's very effective. I think it's a bit more effective than the tier 4s we just talked about. So I show you a deck list that's already hit Beyond, and we'll come on to that shortly. I think Combo Roach has benefited as well in this meta, especially from the Ewiar. I think that card could do really well in Combo Roach. You can even stick a single Rose Queen now in Combo Roach as an alternative finisher. Egg Portal is around tier 3. I think it's just a little bit slow for some of the matchups, but it is a powerful control deck. It's probably one of the more powerful, like, out-and-out control decks in the game. Mid Abyss, still there, kicking around. I actually like Aggro Abyss as well, personally, right now, especially with all the Forest running around. It's quite a bit of a hot take for quick climbing right now. But Mid Abyss is like definitely, Aggro Abyss isn't something you're going to see very often. It might come back into play, whereas Mid Abyss is in the meta. Lots of people are playing it. It's a powerful deck. It's a fast deck, and it's a bit more straightforward than, like, say, like the mode approach. Evo Abyss has been up and down. Again, hard to compare with my previous weeks, right? Because as we said at the start, this is, I've kind of changed the focus a little bit. It's not a tier list of every archetype. It's a true meta snapshot. And I think right now Evo Abyss is a really good deck. Again, one of the more fun decks I've played this season. But I think it's probably right at the top of tier 3. I was tempted to put it in tier 2, but again, with this new approach, I feel like it's right at the top of tier 3. I think a lot of decks can just like outpace it a little bit right now, and that's really its main weakness. So yeah, that is tier 3. Let's take a look at the decks. So this is Chappie. He is rank 1 right now on the Forest class leaderboard, and he was, I think, one of the first, if not the first, to hit Beyond in the new season post patch. So this is his version. So as you can see, what it basically looks like is pretty much like a combo Roach shell, but instead of Roach, you play 3 copies of Rose Queen and a single copy of Deepwood Fairy Beast as well. Outside of that, it really is a kind of combo Roach build, but you've got a couple of extra control tools in there in the Titania. Obviously, we want Titania not just for the powerful control, but obviously to give us the crest so that we get a free 1-drop elf every turn, which of course Opulent Rose Queen can then use to turn into a Bramble. And you really want to be trying to get 7 cards when you play Rose Queen that are either 1 or 2 or 0 cost, because that means that Rose Queen turns them into 7 Brambles, and that means you can do 21 damage for the OTK. Just in case you don't know, obviously most people will know this combo, so I won't dwell on it any longer. But lots of card draw in here, with the Garden's Allure and with the Godwood Staff. Familiar stuff for those who play Roach. You've even got the Hamlets as well, so that and Glades. So there's tons of cycle and card draw to get through to the Opulent Rose Queen. Very, very good deck indeed. Next up, we've got Diane's version, and similar but different, right? It does finish with the big Opulent finish OTK, so we still want the 7 1 or 2 drops, but he goes about it in a very different way. And this time we're playing tablets. I've called this one Rose Tablet OTK. She's actually got 3 copies of the tablet. And what this enables you to do is to very kind of consistently draw all of your kind of like key cards, right? Not just the Rose Queen, but your key cards. So you can play some one-offs. You can play like things like Comet Drive. You can play just like 1 copy of it, because actually then you can afford to play this when you evolve, and that will draw. And because you've played tablet, drawing's really powerful because it means you're going to get through your whole deck very, very quickly. Similar things like cards like Lamaga, right? You know, normally if we weren't playing tablet, we might not play cards like Lamaga, but actually when we're just guaranteeing that we're going to cut our deck down by 1/3, playing a single copy of it is perfectly reasonable. Also really like the Lambert Cairns, by the way, in Diane's version, because of course this card can produce both a 0 and a 1 cost. So that's potentially 2 Brambles that we get out of that for Rose Queen. So it's quite a nice combo. Yeah, other than that, I just think this is another really interesting take on OTK, and it'll be good to see kind of like, you know, which one ends up being the best. They've both proven themselves doing well so far, but it's early days. Okay, so this is Combo Roach. Not too much to say here, guys. I'm not going to linger on this. This is a deck that's been around since set 1, pretty much. Obviously, we've got things like Eradicating Arrow and cards that are coming in. I think you could run EWR now. I don't know whether it's going to make it into the top meta decks, but it's definitely... having the Rush is quite a big deal for this deck. So, yeah. Let's see how this evolves. Egg Portal. Now, this is a sort of pure version of Egg Portal. You can indeed play a hybrid version where you actually run a little bit more from the Puppet list, including obviously Orcas. But I've decided to kind of share a pure egg build for now. This is really interesting with the 3 copies of Stonebreaker and even the single copy of the Drill Sergeant as well. Yeah, it's still a deck that I've probably not really personally played with an awful lot, and certainly not got anywhere close to mastering it. So it is something that I probably need to inject a little bit more time into. Next, we got Mid Abyss, and again, this one got semi-final place at the SVO Championship last weekend. So another proven deck in the tournament scene, and interesting that they went with the Undead Soldier in the 6-drop slot as opposed to the what's it called that's been banned from Take 2. Just basically playing around Banish is the main reason for that choice, and because we've got the Cerberus in, then Undead Soldier is pretty good because you've got 3 bodies that you get to put down, 2 of which have a kind of replace themselves when they die. So yeah, this is a very, very powerful tempo deck. If you're an old school CCG player, this might be the deck for you. Just whacking things down on tempo, putting constant pressure on your opponent until you kind of beat them down and win the game out. Lyria is also an interesting addition as well, because Lyria basically means that you pull your very powerful kind of in here, like your Cerberus, your Rule Knights, your Odins. So you're basically guaranteeing more face damage from Lyria, which is pretty good. And then the Evo Abyss deck, which is coming in at the top of this tier. Just some great new cards, obviously, this season, the Nehan and the Fidel, giving you access to insane heal bursts. And obviously, Belial himself with the big kind of AoE, and then putting your opponent on a clock. If they can't burst you down and win the game, then Belial is going to just do it for you with an OTK of 20 damage. Okay, so in tier 2, guys, I've actually got Evo Sword, which is probably probably quite notable in this snapshot, right? One of the reasons is the deck I'm going to share with you become a little bit infamous by now. We have a player who reached rank 1 in the Sword rankings, but also won a tournament as well. So, like, that's not happened too often in the history of the game, where in the same week we've got a guy who hits rank 1 on the class and then wins a tournament. And I'm sorry, but when someone's got that kind of evidence with a deck, and not only that, but other players were hitting beyond left, right, and center with Evo Sword recently, and I put quite a bit of time into the deck myself towards the end of last season, and I was like, yeah, this is, once you figure out what you're doing with it, this is pretty powerful, actually. So Evo Sword, very, very good. I think it's one of the better Evo builds right now, and it's probably, for me, towards the bottom of tier 2. Next up, we got Puppet Portal, Crest Haven, and Mode Abyss with a bit of an Evo element. But it's really just Mode Abyss with like Bats and Fidel, right? That's the big kind of tech, if you like. These are very powerful decks, guys. These are, these are very, very solid ladder climbers, all 4 of these. Puppet Portal is probably a little bit more simple. And Crest Haven made a bit of a resurgence, right? Like it dropped down a little bit early in the season. We were kind of seeing more people playing Ward, and I think Crest Haven has kind of proved itself and also had some pretty good results in tournament play as well, with posting some pretty impressive win rates across the board. So let's look at the deck. So this is the Evo Sword deck. So this is Yuri's deck. As I said, Yuri hit rank 1 and he won the tournament with this. So I think this deck is pretty fire, to be honest. Like, I like the 2 copies of Amalia, actually, like really just pushing that, like just pressure in the late game when this deck can go so deep, and Amalia doesn't cost you a Super Evo point, and then she helps you trigger Goldarias, which obviously then Super Evo for free. I really like the Golden Knight. I think this has been an excellent addition to the deck, and especially the fact that with Lyria, we can kind of draw a guaranteed either Knight or Amalia. I think Lyria is a cool card. And very, very good in this deck. And the other thing to call out is the Knightly Ardor. The Knightly Ardor is actually pretty good. Like, it's, if you should think of Knightly Ardor a little bit like your Albert, really, right? Because what happens is you play something like Amalia out, and if they don't clear Amalia, then you Knightly Ardor, and she basically gets to attack twice. Well, she's now doing 12 damage, and that's if you haven't evolved or super evolved her. If you've super evolved her, then obviously she'll be doing 18 damage with Knightly Ardor doing double attack. And it's not just Amalia. There's other, same thing with Goldaria, same thing with Amelia. There's lots of cards in here, like where Zirconia, where you can put a big body up front, like on the left, and then get that double attack with Knightly Ardor. So it's a very, very cool deck. You've got the Gilnelise, of course, for the heals. You've got the Golden Knight for the heals. And you can even use Ardor for an emergency heal as well. And then, of course, you've got the Sufon as well, the main Evo guy, where you can play on like turn 9 Luminous Mage and him, and then you do everything gets to Super Evo, and that just triggers Sandolphin's effect really quickly as well. So there's a lot of good stuff in this deck, really powerful. Next we've got Puppet Portal. Not too much new to say here. Some people are keeping the Liams in and going all out and that kind of powerful endgame. Some people are dropping both copies of Liam. Got things like Wired Assault to deal with Willnesses and those types of units. But yeah, I mean, overall, I just think whether you go with the Liams or not, playing Beelzebub now to be able to kind of guarantee so much damage with this deck, I think it's a very, very top tier deck. Crest Amulet. So this is the a version that hit rank 1. Player called Terrarina. I believe it's a female player. I could be wrong about that, but I think it is. And I also think she has played since like Shadowverse 1. This was a version that they came up with anyway. And yeah, it's very cool. And I think Crest is really making a good comeback. Like the Celepha in here, like one copy of the Celepha along with the Blinding Faiths, giving you plenty of AoE and also that extra ward with a little bit of a heal. I think that can be really, really key in this deck. You've only got the 2 sensors, but of course you've got Gilnelises as well and some chip heal from Supplicant. And she's also got 2 copies of the Temple in. I think Temple would end up being a pretty good meta call actually right now with the new patch. Next up we got Mode Abyss, and I think this came second in the SVO Championship. So yeah, really interesting build. I think this has really proved itself in the first 4 to 5 weeks of this meta. And it's just a really solid deck. The only thing is, I do think that maybe Rose Queen might actually pose a bit of an issue for this type of deck, because Rose Queen is able to survive and then just do that 21 damage, and Mode does like to take its time to get going. So it'll be interesting to see how that matchup evolves, especially if Rose Queen, it sees a high play rate in this meta. So that leaves tier 1. And as I said, guys, I wanted this to be a true meta snapshot, not just a tier list of every archetype. And I think in the current meta, I did want to make a point this week of saying that I do think that Earth Rune is the best of the Evo decks. And I think Loot Sword, especially really good players with Loot Sword who know the matchups and can make the right calculations, I do think that these two do enjoy just a slight power edge over the rest of the meta right now. That might change, as I say, it's only early days since we had the balance patch, but for this first week post patch, I do think I want Earth Rune and Loot Sword in a league of their own. They are the two most powerful decks. So let's take a look at the decks. So this is Earth Rune. So this is the deck that actually won the was it the SVO? Was it the SVO championship that it won? It's really powerful, guys. It's really, really good. I climbed to Ultimate quite quickly with this, and it just felt like it could handle pretty much most things, to be honest. It can struggle a little bit with Wardhaven, interestingly enough, and I think there's been some players that have picked on that, and I don't know how it's going to do against the new Forest builds, but overall, this deck is just been fire. You can squeeze in the Apprentice Astrologer and the Rayo. That's why I've kind of got those at the bottom there. So you can drop a single copy of the Witch's New Brew, a single copy of Melvi, and you could put one copy of each of those in. I actually think that's not a bad idea, especially if people are going to be playing more like Wardhaven. Like Rayo's really good there. But if the thing's going to be really fast, then Rayo's not that great against like really fast metas. So yeah. Take your pick. If you want the Rayo in, that's probably how I would do it. Also, quite like the Astrologer in this deck because you can often use it to, like, for example, when Sandalphon comes into your hand and heals one at the end of the turn, the next turn you play Astrologer, put Sandalphon back into your deck, and then it comes back out again, obviously, because you've met the Evo criteria, and it basically gives you more healing. Yeah, Astrologer's quite neat in this deck. And here is your kind of classic Loot Sword deck. So this is a very, very powerful deck, guys. Like I say, it's not necessarily the easiest deck to play. It's not just like I'll just drop this on 1, drop this on 2, drop this on 3. It's not that kind of deck at all. It actually takes quite a lot of calculating. That's what I've realized. But it's super powerful. Like the burst potential in this deck is absolutely insane. Whether it's all of the biting blades that you get from the loot that can chip off 1 damage on your opponent, the crest that you get from Octris, which gives you a 4 damage spell for 1 cost, the Odins, the Sinceros, the Albers. Now you've got Zeta and Beer as well, who can obviously get extra storm units out of that, as well as the tentacles. So there's just so much ability to do face damage with this deck that it is at the top of the meta. So that is it, guys, for the 29th of November. That's what I think the Meta Snapshot looks like. Hope you've enjoyed this format. As I say, I'm BJ the Brave. Got content coming out every single week. So do like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think to this week's rankings. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Ciao for now, guys.